Hi, my name is Benedict. This video we're going to be going through Echoline and Echonest, two delay echo units from the pack. To be fair, we're going to be testing it with Duo Line from the pack. And to be very fair, I want you to be able to see the audio processing isn't containing anything undue. Yes, there's a tiny bit of saturation, tiny bit of top and tail on the EQ. We're pulling back the level just to make it easier to balance with the voice, and then just making sure we don't explode. Put my head back. All right, simple synth sounds. Nothing exciting. This is capable of being a lot more exciting, but I've really turned off everything exciting, because we want to hear how much the echo units can add. So first one, effects units, Benedict Roff-Marsh Echolater. So what that does is it takes any sound that we've got and it echoes it back later. We'll work our way through the knobs and buttons, the features of what they do, and therefore what we can do with them. We'll turn all the sense of extra features off, so we're really looking at one thing at a time. Delay time. You'll see that it's got a tie and we've got a second. Not changing anything, undo the tie. Let's turn our feedback up. Whilst they're tied, you also have the ability to fine tune. So we can now hear a stereo pass spread in the delays. Or we could do it the other way around. If you are going to use the Hussey type effect, then which side the delay pings or pongs to first is going to have a huge impact on how the left-right balance of your mix feels. So this doesn't have an exact ping-pong mode, but it allows you to set it up for yourself. So if we set up, say, 200 here and 400 there, ping pong, easy as. We'll tie them back together. Tone controls. They're very gentle, deliberately very gentle, so we can roll off the highs. Now, there are two ways of routing in here. One is feedback, means that feedback is within the delay, therefore the tone controls only affect the final output. Or there's cross feedback, which takes the output, actually feeds it back into the front end of the delay. So it's not happening inside the delay unit, it's coming out and being plugged back into the front of the delay, which means that these become progressive. So you can hear that rising, and that is like the tape or dub delays. It does introduce a little bit of extra delay, because if you do an instant feedback, how in the world explodes? It's physics. But it's not going to cause you a problem, and you can actually use it as a feature in here. So depending upon what you want to do, if you want that getting progressively duller or brighter on each echo, then use your X feedback. Just be aware that the X feedback, cross feedback, actually sends your left to your right and your right to your left. So rather than your delays staying ping-ponged out here, they partially pull into the center. I've done that deliberately because sometimes it's just far too difficult to deal with stereo delays out here. It's very unnatural. In a real world room, then your delays will kind of normalize into the center. You'll still have a sense of stereo as to how they're bouncing off the walls, but you'll also have a sense of coming into a blob, and that will come from a more natural mix. Your choice as to how you manage that. You can do a bit of both. And if you're doing both there, you hear that there's a lot of movement around those echoes. The next thing that we can do is modulation. Can go quite fast. So with very quick settings, you can actually create a vibrato. Yes, that will delay your sound slightly, but if you get in here, then you can get quite precise as to how low it will go. If it really bothers you, just use PDC and drag your track back. We've got choice with the modulation of the delays, whether both left and right are modulated in the same phase or whether they are inverted from each other. Really important. Far too many delay and chorus units, they automatically put it to stereo. Sounds great until you're working on a mix. And then you find that everything's suddenly stereo you didn't want it to be. You're chorusing a bass and suddenly it's stereo. It's like, I don't want that. Give me a choice. So this gives you that choice. You've got a couple of ways of creating stereo in this situation. One is to simply offset your delays. Yes, you'll have to check that in mono, but you should be checking your mono mixes anyway. Or you can create stereo with your modulation. Obviously, that's a little over-modulated. But you get a really nice natural stereo, which you can get out into light flange territory. It's not a flanger as such, even though technically it is. But if we get ourselves up into the longer delay territory where you're looking at ensembles and things like that, really nice. If we use this mode, then we can control so here we've got a really nice wide sound, but it's not just out there, it's across the whole range. So Echolater, which is designed to be an echo unit, and will also do stellar service as a chorus. The other pair of the pair is Echonest. Echonest's odd name, a little bit of an unusual fellow. So we'll turn over back to our core sound, raw. Again, very simple, deliberately. This is a kind of multi-tap delay, but rather than confusing you with 300 controls, which just makes you not want to use it, they're all tied together. So again, we'll go through fairly simply. We'll turn our balance up. We'll start with this. This you'll recognize. basic left-right delay, which you can tie together. No fine controls. But we've then got this fella here. Both together. When we turn up the feedback, you can hear how it's drifting behind. So we've said we want the right hand to actually retard. Each time it comes back to repeat, we want that echo time to be a little bit longer. So if it started out at, say, 200 milliseconds, next time it might be 210, 220, 230. So where they start together, they then start to become untogether. Yeah. How they beat or cycle around each other. The time difference is in that offset, and you can offset the other way. So if we do something like having right set to a longer time, but then we offset it back, it'll pull back towards. We're not always going to want such long delays, but this actually works very nicely for long delays without them sitting static in the mix. Plus, we normally wouldn't mix them so high. So where you're using a nice kind of a delay, you want it to be heard. But if it's two the same, this moves it around quite subtly. So we can take our time there, and then we've got our next feature, which is this where we've got a diffusion. Now, diffusion in this case is 3 more delay lines. We've got our initial left and right, and then we're feeding those into 3 more. But we don't appear to have a time setting for them, but that's done in the diffusion. What these 3 do is they take their time from these 2 knobs here. These 2 settings define the initial range of these 3 secondary taps. Tap meaning delay lines. So that's when there's no diffusion, they're just set to the donor times. 1, 2, 3. When we diffuse them out, then they become outside of that center. Make them more obvious. So if you're looking for a very obvious echo effect that's interesting, you get a lot of scope there. If you're looking for a very short reverb, what in the early 90s used to be called early reflections, then this is also going to be your friend. Get that down in the mix. not exactly a charming sound, but you hear how it gets a nice little body without getting echoey. We can add in our chorus. We've already got a sound that could sit right in the middle of an 80s type mix. And this isn't about being 80s type anything, but this is a lot of the thinking, is a lot of what was going on at that time. So if you're chasing that kind of sound, then these units are exactly what was happening at that time. They're not meant to be an emulation of them or of that time, but merely allow us to work with that kind of thinking. So we've got chorus and delay. Let's pull an echolater back in again. So we've got a second instance of him. So we get a nice ostinato sound. It's going to sit very comfortably in the middle of a mix, be doing a very simple job musically, but having a big impact on what we feel. Because everything about it's moving. We don't have those static, rigid, sort of digital delay lines that are locked to tempo and kind of brutalize nature. We've got everything moving. If we took the sound and softened it up a lot, some drift back in. Yeah, how we've got this lovely rich sound. We turn off our effects. Nice sound. We could even put a pair of those echolaters in. Let's actually just try that. In for penny, in for pound. And the reason we might consider doing this is if we had been thinking 80s. Let's just copy that patch, paste it there. So now this one's the same as the other. What we're doing there is a classic Juno chorus 1 and 2. So you take your sound, you put it into a chorus, put that into another chorus. We might turn off the feedback on those. Bring in our Echonest. Hear how they really spread across the stereo spectrum without being left and right and nothing in the middle. They're blip all the way across. Beautiful. little bit of echo, which smooths that out. We don't specifically hear any of those things, maybe a bit of the chorusing. One of the great things with Reason and many other things like Bitwig is the ability to fly in controllers. So obviously if you don't really like how these are behaving, or if you decide that you want to have control of your left and right times, but you want them to be independent of each other, then it's real easy. So we could say, let's turn that off. Let's insert a pair of LFO, turn off the evil tempo, and turn them on. We'll send one to CVN1, another to CVN2. Each program has its different ways of handling this parameter stuffy wuff. Fine left and fine right. Now we'll set them to halfway through their range. The reason I'm using these is because if you're using the big knobs, then it's which is not pleasing. See how these are moving? They're moving independently. So if we kill off we'll overdo it a bit. Yeah, now we've got this really nice natural stereo sound. We could add a bit more with this. So we've added stereo without adding that either or, left, right, nothing in the middle. That's a beautiful sound, and we've got virtually nothing happening at the sound source. So in other words, again, just remind you, nice enough sound, but it's not like, you know, some massive uber synth preset with 78 layers. We could even kill off one of the oscillators. Now sounds like a pair of oscillators. So we're getting some of that purity of a single oscillator sound, but a real rich sound and feel. If we put that other oscillator back in, if we decide to go fully for it, so what we've covered is the Echolater and the Echonest, two rather similar delay lines, but you'll use them for slightly different purposes. You may well find yourself reaching for one and then going, no, I think the other's going to do it, or finding, as I have here, building in a balance of the pair of them. So with just two of them, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 delay lines working. all very naturally, all very nicely, and you're not going to need as much reverb because you can do it very nicely and subtly in here without losing yourself to some of the washiness of too much reverb, especially digital reverbs, which can get very washy. Then, of course, if we get into things like using the cross feedback, every time that signal comes back in, we're effectively creating another set of taps, which I just don't want to get into what the numbers are, but in theory, it could become infinite. It's going to howl like a bastard, but in theory, infinite. So, two units that seem simple, but can give you a lot of shine, belly, and smoothness in your sounds without doing any particular damage to them at all. So I've been running these a long time. They've appeared over quite a few records. And at no point have I ever felt like, oh, I need to take them off. So as far as I'm concerned, these are really beautiful devices for achieving the right kind of results, if that's what you're looking for. Any questions? Down below. Thank you. You have a good day now.